Through the Gates is produced under the support of the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management to enhance, promote, and defend the North American model of wildlife conservation and responsible wildlife management. That's our mission. We're engaged in fighting at every level so that wildlife management remains science-based and conservation continues to work for our wildlife. To learn more and join the movement, visit SaveTheHuntColorado.com. The North American model of wildlife conservation is the greatest conservation model in the world. It's a success story that should be shared and celebrated because everybody is a part of it. Well, we've got another episode of Through the Gates to Save the Hunt, and I am here sitting with our cinematographer, videographer, cameraman, editor, producer, Mr. Sean Ender with Peak to Creek Films. And Sean has been, I don't know if it's fortunate enough, but he's been following me around doing stuff for the last 4 or 5 years of us trying to get a message out. And specifically, we became very, very ingrained on Proposition 127. But Sean wanted to sit down and have a conversation with me about some of the happenings and some of the things that maybe we need to convey to the general public and try to get that message out a little bit more organically and holistically. So we're going to sit here for a little bit, give an update, and kind of talk about the state of the state.
State of the state. How is the state?
Well, compared to other states, it's pretty good. It's compared to where we think it should be. It's not anywhere close to where we're used to. And what I'm fearful of is that a lot of the last 7+ years are going to become the norm if we don't at least try to hold the line and turn some things around. And there's other people that think differently, but those people are currently in charge, and those people have had the swift pen to be able to turn around and enact things and to be able to make appointments over the course of the last 6.5, 7 years. And there's going to be some changes. There's going to be some changes come January 2027, but a lot of the things you and I have been working on have been, it's not so much about telling the good story. It's about trying to tell the story so you can save the hunt and so you can try to defend conservation and science-based wildlife management.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I wanted to sit down and talk with you and let people know what you've been up to and what's going on and what's coming down the pike. Because we're kind of at this moment of things have been building. We're kind of in it again. We won 127 handily. You're dumb to think that the antis are just going to go away.
Yeah.
They're coming back in pretty full force. They're throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. And I think kind of the epitome of that idea, you recently had a meeting, encounter,
Chance encounter.
You saw the governor.
I saw the governor.
What did he say to you?
It was a short conversation. He's always professional, polite, and direct and to the point.
He's a politician.
He's a politician, but he also has a particular beef to try to square up on. And I saw him at the legislative barbecue at the state fair back in August, and I think I was one of the first individuals that he interacted with that night. He was there for Ag Night. It was after the commission meeting that we had in Pueblo for Colorado Parks and Wildlife. And the interaction I had with him was short and sweet and direct and concise and to the point. And he indicated to me after a good handshake, Mr. Gates, good to see you. I'm sure you were here for the commission meeting. I said yes. And there were some other people that he was trying to interact with at the same time. But he said, yeah, there's a lot of things happening, a lot of things that are going to change on the landscape. A lot of different things are going to change on the landscape. Going to be a lot of changes. And this was not a meeting that we had. It was a chance encounter at the barbecue. But, we were there to meet and greet and talk to a bunch of different legislators. And we didn't see as many legislators of what we normally would see because that was the second day of the special session that the governor called. And so they met all the way through Sunday or Monday, and there was a bus that came down and brought some legislators from the Capitol because this is a legislative barbecue, and that particular meeting was set up, the special session was set up, I think, in direct contrast to a bunch of other things. There was water congress going on in Steamboat Springs. The cattlemen's, the ag industry was meeting. The commission meeting was in Pueblo, and Then you had the barbecue in Pueblo as well. I think I won't say it was done purposely, but I don't think there was very much consideration for it, and it wouldn't have hurt if that legislative session, that special session, would, in my opinion, would have been called the next week, and then those legislators could have attended those specific events that they'd been planning for quite some time.
I think, obviously the Polis administration has their agenda and how they want to do things, but I think, as we get closer to a new election this year and next, and commissioners and legislators that want to keep their positions, take a note of what happened last year, what the people of Colorado said in 308, 309, and 127. And they don't want politics involved in wildlife management.
No.
They don't want politics telling them, or politicians and heavy-handed out-of-state lobbies and hunting extremists telling them what to do, whether they hunt or not. They want... Our message resonated because it said, trust the experts, Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Yet they continue to push their opinions, their agenda, contrary to what Colorado Parks and Wildlife scientists, experts are saying. So I would say, if you're running for governor, or you want to run for governor, or you're running for a seat on the legislature, pay attention to your constituents, the people that vote, and the people, whether they hunt or not, that they want Colorado Parks and Wildlife to do their job without being forced by political opinions.
I think that's a good synopsis, Sean, and I think that for the people that don't realize how much, in my mind, underhanding manipulation that there is from the administration back into the divisions of government, whether it's Department of Transportation or the Oil and Gas Commission or the Department of Ag or whatever, I think, one thing that's really interesting, and people, maybe this is brushed over on a lot of occasions, but there's not a press release that comes out from Colorado Parks and Wildlife that doesn't say Colorado Parks and Wildlife and Governor Jared Polis. Well, Jared Polis isn't sitting around the table making the decisions, but he's making the decisions on a lot of things and guiding the ship on a lot of different things. Now, is that something that we should be concerned with? When it's not done in accordance with the science and not done in accordance with what the agency experts and professionals profess, then I think this governor or any governor should step back and shut the hell up, because the agendas that are driven to manipulate those processes and procedures, I don't think that's what people vote for. I think that they want the experts to do the work, and the governors then to turn around, and elected officials as a whole, to turn around and take that information, synthesize it, and then turn around and make the decisions based upon the recommendations of the experts, not extremist agenda-driven individuals outside of the experts, whether it's the Department of Natural Resources or with the Oil and Gas Commission or Colorado Parks and Wildlife, or whatever it might be. Let the experts do the decision-making of this. Now, when you appoint experts that you want to do what you want them to do, and they step away from the guidance and the direction of the science-based individuals that are providing studies and documentation and years of boots-on-the-ground experience, I think that that's not anything that the general public would support either. But most people that don't pay attention to the way politics operate don't fully understand or comprehend, because they don't pay attention. It's not that they're stupid about it, they just don't pay attention. And I think that if they knew how things were actually happening, they might second guess what decisions governors, candidates should be available to do, or how they should just turn around and let things happen through the experts. I mean, if you're gonna have guys like Marlon Reese, the first gentleman of the state of Colorado, and Governor Polis pushing and poking and prodding at so many different levels because of what they want, they don't have a wildlife degree. They might have an opinion just like everybody else, but as far as I'm concerned, they're not any more educated about the subject matter for the factual side of things than what a flower shop owner down on Broadway in Denver is, or an Uber driver in Steamboat Springs. I want the experts doing the stuff, and I think the general public, the majority of Coloradans, feel the same way, no matter what department it is. Department of Health, Department of Ag, doesn't matter. But you could see that some things that are happening over the course of the last 6.5 years are now morphing into what might be the pinnacle of the Polis legacy and administration, because they've not, on wildlife, been able to accomplish a lot of what they wanted to. Voters voted for wolves on Proposition 114 back in 2020. But outside of that, there's very little victories that have been had from the animal rights extremist side. Now, I'm not saying they haven't been attempted, but we've been able to thwart them at every single level through the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission, through the General Assembly on pieces of legislation, and through the ballot on several different occasions. And that shows where the vote of the people is. And I think that Governor Polis and First Gentleman Marlon Reese have a different perspective on what they're going to try to do over the next 16 or 17 months of their tenure in the administration.
So let's get into it a little bit. So like we said at the beginning, like I think they're a little upset about how 127 went, and probably 308 and 309.
Oh, yeah.
And they're coming at, like, they came after the Lions again after we won by 10 points.
2 weeks after.
2 weeks after. Like, what's the point that you're not getting here, right? Kind of, let's hit some of the high level stuff. We're going to jump into a little bit more. You ran an election last year, and it's probably some of the busiest ever been in your whole life, and it has not slowed down. So kind of
actually, it's gotten worse. I mean, this year in totality, I've spent about 15 or 20% more nights in hotel rooms than I did last year. And I would have thought that would have slowed down significantly. But between being called into action to promote and profess our wisdom and knowledge and expertise on the victory around the country, to realizing that there were more things being thrown at us than we could count at any one given time from the legislature or the commission, and then looking at all the, what I would consider working groups, focus groups, stakeholder groups that have been formulated, and citizens petitions that have either been attempted and or actually submitted and not heard at this point in time. And so my involvement specifically, you almost, when you're a victor, if you want to continually repeat, just like any Super Bowl champion or world champion in hockey or soccer or baseball or whatever, you could sit on your laurels and think you're the baddest sumbitch on the planet. But we didn't think we were the baddest sumbitch on the planet when we won. It's just that we got a good vibe on the successes of what we were creating, and as much as what we capitalized on back in 2019, 2021, and at the General Assembly in 22, that we knew that what we were doing was right. However, as the Polis administration timeline gets shorter and shorter, and the election of 2026 comes and goes, he's still got 2 months after that before he's actually gone, I think on January 12th of 2027. And so they are strategically planning what they want to do and how they want to accomplish that. They have one more legislative session to go through, the legislative session of 2026. They've got roughly 8 or 9 commission meetings left between now and the time that he's out of office to make these decisions. And, looking at how this commission has been handpicked, and I say handpicked because the people that are in place, in our opinion, a lot of ours opinion, have not been put in for the legitimate representative spots that they were supposed to be adhering to, or the governor was supposed to adhere to. And, when you pick a parks person, it turns out to be an animal rights attorney or a professor. That's not really a parks person. When you turn around and pick a sports person that's an outfitter that doesn't really make the mark of being an outfitter, or just became an outfitter, but doesn't know any other outfitters and doesn't hunt big game, how is that a legitimate representative of an outfitter? When you pick an agricultural person that maybe doesn't have experience on the landscape, especially in this setting where we're talking about wolves and lions and bears and all the public land stuff, you start picking people out, and you realize that people were put into positions for a reason, not for their level of expertise and their knowledge and the value that they bring to the conversation. They might bring it to the conversation that specific individuals want, but it's not happening for the betterment of science-based wildlife management or agriculture production.
The people that were on the council were chosen to represent and actually do represent that particular sector said no to so many things because it's not backed by the science.
Right.
They went through that, they got shot down. They went through the legislature, we told our story, they got shot down. They went to the ballot, they got shot down. Now they're back to square one. And the only way to do that politically is to absolutely stack the deck.
Stack the deck, try to create their dream team, so to speak, and see what they can push through. And if they can get anything through the commission, they're hopeful that the legislature will then see the resolve of the commission, that maybe there's a more receptiveness for them to turn around and carry something on, just like what we've defeated at many, many different levels at the legislature. But they're going to come back this next legislative session. There's going to be some additional gun legislation. There's going to be some wildlife legislation. All these things are going to be brought to the surface. Now, do legislators cave under the pressure of other politics and politicians? I would hope not. But what people need to be concerned with is that I believe, and I have these numbers correct, that all 65 House of Representatives in the state of Colorado will be up for election. The spots will be up for election next year, all 65. Only 4 of them, I think, are term limited. And so there's going to be some that run and some that don't run. But about half of the Senate is in the same position. And then you got the governor's race, and you got the attorney general's race, secretary of state, the treasurer. All those positions are coming up at the same time. 2026 is a pivotal point in Colorado's election history, because if you look at what we're interested in, agriculture, wildlife, conservation, natural resources, I'm interested in a bunch of other stuff too, Sean. But I'm not going to have an abortion, and nobody I know is going to have an abortion. If they want to, well, I'm not going to stop from somebody. It's not that I'm for it or against it. It's not my body to make the choice. I have a personal opinion, but I'd be damned if I think that I have the right to be able to check a box on what somebody else is going to do for whatever reason that hasn't been determined yet. Do I care about roads and bridges? You bet your ass. Do I care about taxes? You bet your ass. But what's my wheelhouse that I know about? And it's conservation and habitat and natural resources, hunting and fishing. That's my wheelhouse, and I want to stay in that. But we have to get politicians to understand that 94% of all Coloradans engage in some form of outdoor recreation. It might be kayaking, it might be mountain climbing, maybe it's hang gliding, maybe it's bungee jumping, or whatever the hell they do. But they hunt and they fish, and some trap, and some water ski, and some walk their dogs, and some geocache, and some camp, and there's a plethora of different things out there. 94% of all Coloradans engage in outdoor recreation of some capacity. Not 94% engage in abortion. Not 94% engage in Medicare and Medicaid. They will at some point in their time, but you don't at this specific time. And what you vote on now might not be effective 20 or 30 years from now. If we look at the politicians and the way that they've actually structured themselves in the state of Colorado since about 2000 to 2004, and then what happened in 2008. Now, it's hard enough to get people to remember what they did with their taxes 70 years ago, let alone what happened in politics 25 years ago. This has been an ongoing process, and I honestly believe that the Coloradans, the state of Colorado itself, is not red and it's not blue. It's a variation of pink to purple back and forth at every given time, depending on who feels what, or who's running for president, or who's running for governor, or what ballot initiatives come up, or what the economy's doing. I don't think that we're red or blue. And I'm hoping, based upon what has happened over the course of the last 2 election cycles, and specifically in 2024, that we're going to see some more pink and purple surface to the top, like what we did on 127, 308, and 309 that you mentioned.
And that's the thing I think people are probably going to get mad at you for saying, because they're going to get up in arms and say, we're deep blue. And I think 127, and Jason Mikesell said this in a previous podcast, of like, Colorado voters are smart, and they want to make educated and informed decisions, the vast majority. And that's why people dove deep into, what is this thing? And then they dove deep, and then they said, no, I shouldn't be making a decision on that. Or, no, we should just keep it in the hands of experts. Like, everything that they read on 127 was, even if on the surface they thought like, you don't need to be killing lions, They dove deeper and figured out what North American model is, why management is important, what the science says, where the money's coming from, and a massive amount of Colorado, except for what, 2 counties, said
Six counties total
Yeah.
on 127.
said no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you look at the way that people perceive their elected officials once they're elected. They're good until they're not, but then when they start to sour on them, as you're seeing on multiple levels here in this state, they start to sour significantly. Now, if you paid attention to social media, that's completely different. But there isn't anybody in the state of Colorado right now that is happy with wolf introduction. There's the advocates over here, that proponents of wolf introduction, they're pissed. You got the opponents of wolf introduction, they're pissed. Colorado Parks and Wildlife staff, they're pissed. The governor's office, they're not happy because there's so many moving parts. The legislature, they're damn sure not happy. You can see that by the bills that come out and the vitriol that goes back and forth between.
That they got it right.
Yeah, and so nobody is happy with wolf introduction in the state of Colorado.
Doesn't that just epitomize what happens to wildlife when politics directs it?
Well, at least when ballot-box biology
Yeah.
directs it, yeah. And I think that those are things that probably helped us significantly on 127 and on Ordinance 308, the fur ban in Denver, because people went, why the hell am I doing this? Why do I get a chance to vote on this? I mean, we did an interview earlier with a little gal, and she moved here in 2020. She didn't even vote on wolves then. She voted, but she didn't vote on wolves, and her statement was, I didn't know anything about it. Why should I turn around and decide what the state's going to do on wolves when I don't even know what the hell's going on? And she would just get in the hunting. She didn't feel comfortable enough to check the yes or no box. I think that amount of people that did that, probably, if they would have checked no, because they didn't know but they had a perception, it probably would have been a lot closer. But my point of that is, if you go back to Proposition 127 last year, there was a hell of a lot of people that turned around and said no.
Mm-hmm.
No. And a lot of those people we know said yes on the wolf introduction. And now that they've seen what a cluster and a conundrum that wolf introduction has been and become, I think they've started to pay a little bit closer attention to things that they don't have any knowledge about, even though they might have an opinion. They don't have any knowledge about it, and I think that's helping us in the long run. We just have to figure out a way to keep that momentum going and cast aside the ignorance, cast aside the stupidity, cast aside the agenda-driven mentality of certain groups and individuals, and just give it back to the experts and say, no matter what, the experts should be the decision-making authority, period.
So let's talk about decision makings. You brought up citizens petitions and you brought up working groups. So what are some of the, like, you're busy with those two. What are the working groups that you're sitting on? Where'd they come from? Why are we engaging in this? What is it being worked on? What could potentially be the outcome of these?
Well, I'll start back, going all the way back to November of 2024.
Okay.
And Jerry Abker and myself, a former carnivore fur bearer biologist with Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Yeah,
That is a
he's
smart,
badass. I mean, he
calculated.
had 30 some odd years into the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Division Wildlife Agency. He came out in support of our effort and our campaigns on 127. But he and I conspired together to turn around and put a citizens petition together to collect more data on fur-bearing animals. Now, that was 2 weeks after the election. I think it was the third week of November is when we did that of last year. We wanted more data and more statistics on beavers and swift fox and bobcats. And we submitted that in the appropriate time. And January and March came along and our petition was not heard. It's Chapter 3 in the agency's regulations. And that's when you're supposed to open it up, is when you have those petitions in January and March. Well, they didn't hear it. First time they actually mentioned anything about it, from my recollection, it was in May. And then June came along, in July, and they still haven't heard it. Well, if anybody's listened to the commission meetings the last year and a half or so, there's an ongoing and an increasing concern from commissioners and from some general public, stakeholders, about we're decimating fur bearer populations. You shouldn't be able to turn around and trap fur bearers, which we can all use cage traps in the state of Colorado. You shouldn't be able to shoot fur bearers. You shouldn't be able to salvage fur bearers. You shouldn't be able to sell the fur off of fur bearers. You shouldn't be able to do anything with them unless they deem it necessary or what they decide, because everything goes, in their mind, against the North American model of wildlife conservation. It goes against ethics. It goes against moralities. It goes against science. It goes against everything according to our opponents. Colorado Parks and Wildlife is sitting there going, okay, now what do we have to do? Well, the commission is who brings up the petition that we submitted. They didn't do it. So this whole process, they started talking about these working groups, these stakeholder groups. Interesting enough, as the fur bearer stakeholder group started to take effect, beavers were taken out of the fur bearer working group or focus group because there was a separate beaver focus group, state management plan working group that was going to be enacted or compiled with that. So I was selected, which I was hoping I would be, because I'm still the president for the Colorado Trappers and Predator Hunters. If they didn't have me on the fur bearer group, well, who the hell were they going to put on it? So they had the fur bearer group, which is consumptive users and agriculture producers, and non-consumptive users, even though they're consumptive on the landscape, they don't consume fur-bearing animals. And then a bunch of their stakeholder advocates from their side that talk about animal welfare and animal rights and animal husbandry and animal stewardship and whatever the animal word that they can come up with at the time, depending on who they're talking to. Both of these groups were formulated almost simultaneously, even though a bunch of the stuff was kicked down the road. On the first day that the proponents of restricting or prohibiting fur bearer management, they met, the Center for Biological Diversity filed a petition. And the petition was to ban the sale or the commercialization of fur-bearing animals, which included the fur and the claws and the hides and the skull and whatever the hell else was incorporated into that. Now,
Sorry, who's
Center for Biological Diversity.
yeah, and who's running that now?
Well, Samantha Miller, who is running their carnivore or commercialization or fur trapping or fur bearer, I don't even know what the hell her title is, but she was the one who ran the campaign for Cats Aren't Trophies back last year on 2023 and 2024 to stop the harvest of mountain lions, bobcats, and lynx, even though we can't harvest lynx in the state of Colorado. The interesting thing is,
people know who the same players are.
Same players.
Same organization.
Same players. And two of the other people sitting on their side of the working group, Mark Searles is with Project Coyote. He worked side by side, hand in hand with Samantha.
Ran the campaign.
Julie Marshall. She was also on Cats on Trophies. She sit on their side. Now, these are some of the most, they could call me extreme on my side, but I'm willing to realize that science plays a role into this. And I would just assume and prefer that Parks and Wildlife did that role. Individuals on their side are, in my mind, often the most extreme that you could possibly get. Now, there's representation from the Center for Biological Diversity. Not Samantha. She's not sitting on there. But Samantha filed the petition when they have a representative for CBD, Center for Biological Diversity, sitting on the working group. They did that the day that they turned around and started that first deal.
So the Stat Commission is going to engage in a citizen's petition from the Center of Biological Diversity, but not Dan Gates and Jerry Apker, who's a seasoned and respected biologist and manager.
Yeah, the context would be that they want their petition to be heard before ours, and ours has to do with science, and theirs has to do with restriction and prohibition. Now, the reason that the Fur Bearer Management Working Group, for lack of better terms, you call it a working group, focus group, stakeholder group, whatever. There's a definition between the three, but we're still sitting in the room trying to come up with a plan of action. They want to see significant changes on fur bearer management. The Colorado Parks and Wildlife feels that there's not a need for specific significant changes. Maybe more data, but until they have the money to create, a plan to get more data. I mean, it took us, I've been playing this game for roughly 25 years. It took us almost 20 years to get enough funding for a bobcat study. Why? Because a lot of people have historically not been concerned with the overall data or the data collection and the data-driven science, what CPW or most game agencies have when it comes to fur bearers. Colorado's got 17 fur bearers, and one that has now been taken off and put into the beaver side of the discussion even though beavers are supposed to be these keystone species and going to solve all aspects of biodiversity and ecosystem adaptations in the state. They're going to solve water tables, and they're going to solve willow propagation, and they're going to solve wildfires, and they're going to turn around and create all of these chronicles of Narnia out there. I use that term lightly because beavers talked in the Chronicles of Narnia, so I'm thinking that they're asking these beavers what to do. But you have two citizens' petitions, one filed on data, one filed on we don't want you to kill anything, we don't want you to harvest anything, we don't want you to sell anything. Two citizen petitions dealing with one chapter in Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Chapter 3, that now has two working groups established, one on beavers, which is a statewide plan, and one on fur bearers straight across the board. And all of these are supposed to intertwine for the betterment of what, besides the human dimensions or the public perception side of things? And based upon what I know, and based upon what I've seen, Ordinance 308 that failed in the city and county of Denver last year by 17 points nonetheless, pretty much set the tone and narrative about commercialization of fur. If it's done within the legal boundaries of science-based wildlife management, the utilization of fur is widely accepted worldwide when it comes to the North American model of wildlife conservation. It's widely accepted under a practice of sustainable management and harvest because they are fur-bearing animals. Now you see where the advocates of these proponents of these issues, they don't even want them to be called fur-bearing because it gives this negative connotation like there's something other than or special. They pedestalize them, or they're bastardizing fur.
It was the same, so they don't want us to call elk a game animal?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because then we don't automatically put this context in there that it's from our perspective and not their perspective. Yeah. Well, we're at a point in time now trying to figure out how we put ourselves into the position of letting the process play out on both of these focus groups. They hired facilitators, a couple $100,000 to help do the shell game on this stuff. The facilitator for the fur bearer group is supposed to take the recommendations, which will be done here in the month of October, take the recommendations, synthesize everything that was heard and through the working group or through the focus group and got them all together, then present that to the agency. The agency is supposed to synthesize that and then present it to the commission. That's likely to happen in February to March the next year, with the culmination of factors between March and May, so we're told. The beaver deal, on the other hand, which interrelates and cross-pollinates on the fur bearer side, is supposed to have this other stakeholder process that's in the works, and it's got like 80 stakeholders sitting around the table on it, individuals from different sectors and different sectors of industry, health department, water quality, transportation, agriculture, habitat, you name it. They've got wildlife control operators, and they have sportsmen, and they had sportsmen and trapper, not trappers, but trapper, and I was a person, yeah, trapper. So instead of having trappers and sports person, but I'm a sports person, I'm a sportsman, I buy licenses, I hunt, but just because I'm the trapper sitting at the table, they already
pigeonhole.
Yeah, I'm the trapper. Got to make sure that Dan Gates is always the trapper. He's not a sports person because that makes him look bad if he's
legitimate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, trying to put these two things together, you've got one stakeholder process that's going through a broad, very broad outreach. I don't know what the goal of that is. You got another stakeholder process on the fur bearer side that's going pretty broad, but the interesting thing is the first meeting that we were actually able to have between harvesters or managers and what they call advocates, even though I call them reformers. I think they should be reformers and not advocates because I'm a frickin' advocate too.
Yeah.
You know, I advocate more. I've advocated more for beaver management and fur bearer management than any of those bastards ever have. I don't want to kill everything. I provide a wildlife conflict human resolution service, and I do it as professionally and ethically and morally and animal welfare-wise as what I possibly can. So I guess I'm not an advocate because they've already conned me as to being a trapper. you put those two things together, I'm not so sure how you're going to get one species that is being addressed over here to be included in a Chapter 3 regulatory side that is included in 17 species over there, and you're going to cross-pollinate those recommendations that is going to be in the best interest of wildlife management.
Right. That'd be saying we're going to do a deer study and a deer species study.
Well, let's say we're going to do a deer study, or we're going to do a whitetail study.
Yeah.
In the state of Colorado, for the most part, we have deer licenses. Now, you can get specific whitetail licenses.
Right.
But deer are managed as deer. You could turn around and go one step farther and say, we're going to turn around and do a trout focus group, but it's only going to be a rainbow trout focus group. Maybe you're splitting hairs, maybe you're not. But when you have 80 stakeholders on one side and you have 24 stakeholders on another side in two different groups.
Well, you've always said, let's not pedestalize anything. Let's not bastardize anything. It's all together. We don't manage elk for the hunter. We manage elk habitat for the elk, the deer, the moose, the birds, the squirrels, the rabbits, the lynx, for everything, whether it's harvested or not. So it seems to me that they're pedestalizing the beaver because
we got more beaver now than more beaver now than we've had any time in my lifetime. Colorado Parks and Wildlife's initial presentation that they did to the Stakeholder Beaver Working Group was between 60 and 90,000 beaver on essentially enclosed stagnant waters in the state of Colorado. That's done from satellite, GIS, whatever the hell they do on their science side, which I'm not fully privy to. But they did very little compilation of information from running water. I brought up things about the South Platte River, the Colorado River, the Animas River, the Rio Grande River, the Arkansas River, and say nobody's watching this, and all these tributaries dump into these all the drainages jump into the tributaries. We have more than 90,000 beaver in the state of Colorado. I'll bet $1 to a dog turd. The thing is that we have very limited means to harvest because of cage trapping. Because of the cost of cage traps to be able to trap a beaver, which, by the way, those between $400 and $600 a trap. Beaver pelts are worth about $18. The season structure on beavers is set to the point to where there's not many people that avocationally pursue beavers on public land. Most of it comes from human-animal conflict resolution on private land, irrigation ditches, damming up the culverts, damming up somebody's fields, cutting trees down, and whatever it might be. The avocational side of beaver harvest is not anywhere near what these proponents of these issues are trying to profess. The avocational harvest of bobcats and weasels and mink and pine marten are not anywhere what they profess. I know because I'm the president for the Colorado Trappers and Predator Hunters, and I can tell you pretty much verbatim of who does what, when they do it, where they do it, how much they get. And because we run our fur auction out there, where it's a conglomerate to be able to salvage the animal parts and pieces that come up, a lot is conflict resolution, a lot is damage control, a lot is roadkill, a lot is recreational or avocational. You bring that into the pot, I know what's coming in out there, and about 70% of all the fur that we have at our auction out there every year comes from out of state. It's fur brokers or individuals bringing it from out of state. So when they see 1,500 coyote pelts, 1,100 of them are from out of state.
There's landscape.
Yes.
Western, Midwestern.
But they act like that we're out there running around with semi-loads of fur.
Yeah.
And we're selling fur at an exorbitant rate to send it to China, which is nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah, so let's jump into fur trade a little bit. Let's talk about legitimate use and ethics and use of it. So how does fur trade fit into the North American model? Because they argue that it's completely against game markets.
Well, they keep talking about game markets, but game markets pretty much were addressed on the meat side of things. And there's specific exceptions or exemptions in the model that they never mention. They fail to mention. I mean, I've got documentation from John Organ and Shane Mahoney and even Valerius Geist who helped write the North American model that the legitimate use side, and there's an exemption for fur-bearing animals because of the original market side of things. if they really want to get into the nut cutting or the hair splitting on stuff, you don't ever see them bitching about, to any degree, crab potting or halibut fishing or salmon fishing. The North American model covers all that as well. But they don't bitch about that because people are eating it. But they don't want you to turn around and salvage fur because they deem it as it's not a legitimate reason. It's not a legitimate means to be able to turn around and manage fur-bearing species. I understand that if you don't want to go to a restaurant and eat meat, you can order the salad. But if you're going to try to shut the restaurant down because somebody else wants to eat meat, I find that repulsive and I find that offensive in today's society on any level. And I think that what they're trying to do is they're trying to instill their values and their ethics and their interpretations about something that they've never had anything to do with in supporting monetarily or trying to definitively instill some sort of benefit or enhancement to something. They just want to stop it.
Right.
And so the easiest way to do that is to call something foul. And I think that that's a travesty in itself, because calling it foul when that's the only reason that we even have it, that it's other than conflict or other than a nuisance in today's society, I think that that's a travesty to the species themselves. As I've said on many podcasts and I've said in different clips that you and I've done, you know, Colorado's got 17 species of fur-bearing animals. Fur-bearing animals, that's what they do. They produce fur.
Right.
They don't produce hair. They don't produce follicles like what deer and elk do. They produce fur. That's why they're fur-bearing species. If you want to call them something else, go ahead and call them something else. But don't turn around and bastardize me for trying to turn around and utilize something in a respectful, ethical, moral manner that is regulated of an abundant resource that has never been extirpated in any way, shape, or form through regulated management guidelines and opportunities. Was it unregulated before? You bet your ass. Was it a travesty? You bet your ass. But don't blame what Jim Bridger did 200 frickin' years ago on what I'm doing in a season structure where I have to buy a license and go out and I turn around and do my surveys and I do my adaptations of what I need to do for restrictive harvest. Don't you dare turn around and compare me to the frickin' buffalo hunters of the 1860s or the frickin' beaver trappers of the 1820s. That's bullshit.
In a system that has brought levels of these species from here to here.
We've got more now than what we've had in modern history, and we've done it because of regulated management opportunities of an abundant resource. People need to understand that when a red fox has pups, doesn't matter whether it lives on the cemetery down the street or it's next to a chicken coop in Pennsylvania or Ohio, when that thing has pups, it probably has between 4 and 8, and about 50% of them will die within the first year or less. The surplus of that is the offtake that can be sustained because the managers have decided that we've got these animals that breed and they have litters. They don't have individual animals. They don't have an occasional twin. They have individual litters of 4 to 6 or 8 or 12 or whatever might be in it. The compensatory loss of wildlife that happens naturally is part of the legitimate offtake. But why can't I be part of that offtake? And why can't you be part of that offtake?
And put it to a use. So let's talk about use a little bit. When you go to fur trade convention or outdoorsman days or Mile High and somebody's got a rack of pelts that they're selling, what do people who buy those do with them?
Well, that's a good question, because I'm one of those idiots that turns around and sells that stuff, and I'm also one of the idiots that goes around and turns around and buys that stuff. And I have for the last freaking 50 years of my life. The utilization of fur products is an admiration of the renewable resource that we term as a renewable resource that our opponents term as an abomination. It's abhorrent that we do that. I mean, they just can't synthesize that in any way, shape, or form. So somebody sees a rack of furs, maybe they want to make a hat. Maybe they want to make a coat. Maybe they want to turn around and lay it across the back of the couch. Maybe they just turn around and want to feel and touch and see what Mother Nature's beauty is by just not knowing that it was run over on the road or shot inadvertently because it was in somebody's chicken coop or it was damming up somebody's lodge.
So you have a skunk vest
Yeah.
that got kind of a lot of attention. People were like, "This
Oh, yeah.
is sweet. Where'd you get one of those?"
And that's all roadkill.
It was all roadkill.
All
So
roadkill.
the
And
things that died because of human impact on the landscape got put to a legitimate use.
I made a statement out of that because it was all roadkill. Now we do several hundred nuisance skunks a year, and we do not relocate skunks in the state of Colorado because it's illegal because of the host for rabies. So people said, well, just take them somewhere. Well, you can't. The law says you can release them on site or you can kill them on site. That's what you can do. I wanted people to understand that all of this has a use. Skunks right now are averaging around $75 a piece. That's not for me to go catch one at somebody's house. I charge $150 to $200 to do that. Guaranteed no spray. But people turn around and sell skunk pelts because the Jewish community makes hats out of them. Now, nobody's screwing with the Jewish community because it's a religious deal. But just like on the fur bearer stuff we did last year where there was an exception on fishing lures, Samantha Miller, she turns around and puts this new petition out talking about fishing lures are exempt, but it specifically says in there, and I ain't going to quote verbatim, but it specifically says that you can sell the lures and the flies, but you just can't turn around and sell the pelt to make the stuff. Where the hell does she think that they're going to turn around and get the stuff to sell the finished product? And so
would you rather us be out there with fishing lures made of fake plastics and petroleum
and sticking that in water
and stick that in the water or
Yeah.
lose it in a bush and it's there forever? Because we talked to the okayest trapper, Zach Hansen.
Zach Hansen.
He brought up a good point on Outdoorsman Days last year. If you haven't seen that, basically what he said is you can buy a petroleum-based fur coat, and because it's cheap, it may be expensive, but it's made cheaply, it's plastic. You're going to throw it away when you're done with it. It's going to go to landfill. It's going to sit there forever.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can utilize legitimate use of furs and make a coat, a blanket, a hat. It'll last forever. It's going to get passed down through generations. And then if by chance you're done with it, don't want it anymore, it's gone, decomposes.
Well, and the interesting thing about that is it's going to die anyway.
Right.
At some point in that 3 to 5 year life cycle, it's going to die anyway. And if we have a management process that allows for the compensatory loss and allows for the population enhancement and also allows for the human interaction to harvest and enjoy that, I agree with that. Our opponents don't. They don't think that there should be anything that we have to do with any of it, even though there's a compensatory loss out there. We had our first meeting, and a buddy of mine who's part of the meeting on the Fur Bearer group laid out some statistics, and he drove down from Craig, Colorado, about what he found on the road on the way down to Denver for the first meeting. I don't remember the exact numbers, but he found deer and elk and beavers and weasels and muskrats and fox and coyotes and bobcats and rabbits and, whatever the hell else there was. I realize that that's just part of it and that there's still more that I should be able to turn around in my mind to be able to salvage and take off and utilize, as long as it was appropriately managed of an abundant resource, as long as it was ethically harvested in the best known practices demand, which trapping right now is still the best known practices demand. The best management practices, the animal welfare side of that, has determined that. And still in Colorado, we're forced occasionally to use cage traps. Okay, cage traps are okay to turn around and transport something. Cage traps are okay to turn around and catch a skunk in somebody's backyard, but if I turn around and try to do it for a bobcat or I try to do it for a red fox, oh my God, that should never be allowed to happen because I'm putting it into this location and I'm forcing it to stay there for 24 hours or less because we have a 24-hour check. Trying to get people to understand that what Chris visualized when he came down and saw dead animals on the road. What's the difference between that or if I'm in the river bottom down in the bottom that I turn around and trap or shoot a beaver, or if I'm on the high mountain plateau on the other side of the highway and I shot a bobcat or a coyote? What difference does it make if I harvested it or it was dead on the road and we decided to turn around and salvage either one, as long as it's managed in an appropriate manner, that we have an abundant resource that is perpetual and sustainable over and over.
Well, you go back to full circle on the lion fight, is a lot of people, that's a point that resonated with a lot of people. It absolutely, like banning hounds and hunting of lions and bobcats will absolutely not stop the take of
No.
mountain lions. And to Steve Rinella's point, it's not like the lion who gets shot is out there saying, well, thank God it's a paid government employee and not
A trap.
Dan Gates or a lion hunter or a trapper. Like, one more on the first side and the legitimate use and how that all works. There are species that are signed off and managed by CITES, right?
Yeah, the Conservation and International Trade of Endangered Species.
Okay.
The Convention of International Trade in Endangered Species.
Kind of like this massive worldwide agreement of experts that says this is okay thing to do.
Oh, yeah, and if anybody hasn't really investigated that, they should understand what it is, because in Colorado, bobcats, in the United States, bobcats have to be tagged once you harvest that cat for any sort of use, whether you want to tan it, whether you want to mount it, whether you want to sell it, whatever. You want to keep it, it has to have the tag on it to be able to process that. That's because, not because the bobcats are so highly regarded as threatened or endangered, is because they closely resemble a bunch of other spotted cats in the world, and the majority of those people could not physically identify what a bobcat was. So now this tag that's affixed to it determines that this was from North America, just like lynx. This was from North America, and it was legally harvested and accounted for through regulated practices of fur bearer management.
And we're keeping an eye on those species, and that species currently is least concern.
Least concern.
You think CITES isn't going to speak up when that if by chance, which is not really going to happen, but if bobcats somehow something happens and their populations tank, you don't think CITES is going to speak up and say, hey, you need to start harvesting bobcats? Or Dan Gates and the Colorado Trappers and Predators Hunting Association is going to say, hey, there's not a lot of bobcats out here like there used to be. What's going on? Let's do some research. Maybe we hold back harvest.
Yeah, and from a personal standpoint, us talking about this fur bearer working group, focus group, the historical side of my involvement and some of my counterparts that are sitting in these groups as well, fur bearers are cyclical. They go in cycles.
Sure.
Some based upon weather conditions, some based upon prey conditions, some based upon population of humans moving into different areas. It might, whatever. But they learn to adapt. And I can tell you, and I've said this many times, the places that I trapped when I was 15 years old, for the most part, are the exact same places that I trapped when I'm 62 years old. It's the same rock pile, it's the same drainage, it's the same draw, it's the same ranch, it's the same gully, it's the same hillside, the same saddle, and I'm catching the same type of critters in those same locations, given that climate change is changing the world, and given that beavers are not around to create this ecosystem biodiversity, all these claims that our opponents keep saying, given that habitat has decreased because of human expansion, the wildlife has continued to prosper and perpetuate itself, propagate itself. And because I run a wildlife control business, I can tell you that the places that have created urban sprawl to go out have now encompassed fur-bearing animals and what some would consider to be nuisance or pest animals, whether it's a raccoon or a skunk or a muskrat or a rabbit or whatever. They've learned to adapt in around the people side of things. We've got more fur-bearing animals in the state of Colorado than any time that I've been alive. Anytime.
With less habitat.
Less habitat, a significant amount of less people out there pursuing it. Some has to do with price. Some has to do with a different process of people's lives. Some has to do with aging out and people not doing it. They used to historically do it. We don't have as many sportsmen in the country, let alone as many small game or fur-bearing sportsmen in the country. But stop and think, when I was a kid, and for anybody that doesn't understand this, when I was a kid, I could walk out my door on a ranch that we caretook with my folks. I could get on my donkey or I could get on my Honda 70 and I could go run my traps. You know what that place is now? Houses. Half-acre, 1-acre spots. That was a 6,000-acre ranch, and there's 8,000 houses in there now. Okay, the wildlife is still there, but it's there for me to go in and charge somebody to turn around and get out of their house or off their property, underneath their deck or their hot tub, or the muskrats that are in their little culverts and whatever. The wildlife is still there, But that wildlife is not considered part of a species of wildlife that Colorado Parks and Wildlife manages because it's considered to be nuisance or semi-domesticated urban wildlife. There's a component there that they can engage in, but stop and think. Do we want Colorado Parks and Wildlife managing the nuisance stuff in somebody's attic or their crawl space or underneath their hot tub or that's getting into their garden? No. That's not their job. That's the private homeowner's individual job to be able to do that.
Because you're talking about individual animals,
You're talking about
not landscapes and species of animals.
right. And if you listen to Jerry Abker back in 2019 when he testified at the first commission petition that we heard to ban the harvest of bobcats, he said, if I have a well-manicured yard or a golf course, I'm not concerned with the single blade of grass that is yellow or the little yellow spot over there on the other side of the green or on the other side of the fairway. I'm concerned about the whole golf course. I'm concerned about the entire landscape, the entire football field. I think that Colorado Parks and Wildlife has done a formidable job, given the circumstances that they have to deal with, to manage all of our game species, and for the most part, all of our other non-game species and threatened and endangered species to the best of their possible abilities, with 6 million people, 84 million visitors every year, with 33,000 agricultural properties in the state of Colorado, with how many different organizations and perspectives and ideologies and opinions. They've done a really damn good job of not getting into the weeds so much that they're worried about the blade of grass like our opponents are. They're worried about the one coyote.
Right.
They're not worried about all of the coyotes. They're worried about the coyote they see somebody that traps or that shoots. I think the Colorado Parks and Wildlife has done a formidable job, given what they have to work with, given how complex wildlife management is, and given the constant reverberation of animal rights agenda mentality that they want to turn around and change every single thing that we do when it comes to wildlife management and wildlife resources. If you want to support a company that supported the efforts to defeat Proposition 127, then you need to support Davis Tent. Davis Tent has provided quality canvas goods for outdoorsmen for the last 50 plus years. For more information, go to davistent.com. If you want to support another business that was instrumental in helping us defeat Proposition 127, check out Salida Gun Shop. Salida Gun Shop in Salida, Colorado provides quality products, expertise, and knowledge from individuals that actually do what they sell. Go to salidagunshop.com. Listen to the advice of Cameron Haynes and support companies that are supporting your cause and your efforts. Minturn Anglers is one of those companies. Minturn Anglers provides product and fishing excursions in Colorado and are second to none. For more information, go to minturnanglers.com.
You talk about the population of Colorado, the amount of visitors in Colorado, and who our opponents are. Last year, we talked about the devil at the door. I think there's a pretty starting to become a very defined devil at the door.
Mm-hmm.
There's a movement that a lot of the same names again, Marlin Reese being one of them, Rewilding. What is Rewilding? Who's running it? What is their ultimate vision of how they would? What is the system of rewilding that they want to come in to replace a system that scientifically, historically, for 125 years has perpetuated wildlife to numbers we've never seen since Europeans came here?
Well, I think the biggest misconception about what they're trying to coin the phrase of rewilding is nothing further from the truth. I mean, you can't rewild unless we're all gone. You can't rewild unless you're going to reclaim, and like the Bureau of Reclamation turns around and comes in and does things, or what mining companies have to do, or what utility companies have to do. They rewild a small section that they went in and tore up. But how are you going to do that in a grand landscape when you've got a state with dozens and dozens of managing agencies that manage the landscape, and you've got millions of people that have private property, and you have water conservation that essentially goes to the people first, and then you have the pollution side of it, or you have the traffic side of it, you have the smog side of it, whatever the hell it is. I don't understand how you can rewild something and expect that to do anything other than appease people that don't like what's going on, and they think that they bitch loud enough that they're going to turn around and make enough changes to where it's going to be of long-term benefit. I believe that rewilding is meant to stop all aspect of agriculture on private property or public property first and private property second. I believe it's meant to stop the consumptive use of wildlife management in any way, shape, or form. And I'm going to give a plug out because I think it's worth people paying attention to see the lunacy. It'll probably be more views or sound bites than they've ever gotten since they started their podcast. But Samantha Miller and Mark Searles have a podcast called The Wildlife Wire. If anybody wants to see the lunacy that I'm talking about and referring to, you should go back and listen to some of their podcasts. Because don't listen to me. I'm going to go back right to what I said during the campaign. Don't listen to me and don't listen to the lunatics over there. Listen to the experts. Well, in this case, don't listen to me about my interpretation of what they're saying. Go watch it or listen to it yourself. The ones in the month of September, they had Commissioner Jay Touchton on, who's a rewilding proponent, the Southern Plains Land Trust. He was an attorney for Humane Society of the United States and Wild Earth Guardians for 30 years. His better half, Nicole Rose Marino, was recently appointed to the executive director spot in the Colorado State Land Board. This is part of the rewilding process, but it would behoove listeners to check out the Wildlife Wire and listen to Jay Touchton's version. Listen to any of the ones that they've done, because you'll sit there and if you're from this side of the aisle, you'll get nauseated to the point you'll either start drinking or want to slit your wrist, one of the two. But Jay Touchton, and then the one, I think it was around the 4th of September, whatever, First Gentleman Marlon Reese was on there. And it's worth noting that not only does he believe in that philosophy and that ideology, listen to what he says and listen how they bastardize the rancher and the ag industry, and listen to what they feel about the sportsman industry. Listen to what they feel about the conservation efforts of Colorado Parks and Wildlife and the management objectives of what CPW is trying to do. Listen to my opponents, your opponents, the opponents of science-based wildlife management and conservation. Listen to what they're trying to say and what they're trying to do, and they're not afraid to say it because they realize that they've got 16, 17 months to be able to turn around and do it. And
but they also think they're so in tune with everybody else that they just need to say it and everybody's going to agree with them.
Well, and I would hope that if people that watch our stuff would turn around and go listen to that, it'd give them some boost up. Maybe some people would pay attention to it. But I don't want to live like that. And I think the majority of the people in the state of Colorado, based upon the vote of Proposition 127, based upon the landslide victory in Denver City and County on 308, based upon the 30-point plus margin on 309, the slaughterhouse ban, I don't think the majority of Coloradans want to live like that. They need to hear what our opposition is saying. The best way to find out what your enemy's planning to do is listen to see what they're doing. And I think that would give people an eye-opening experience, and then come back to Through the Gates. Come back and figure out what we're trying to do to counter that stuff, and the alliances and the alliances and the coalitions that we've built and what we've been able to sustain, well, since our inception over 10 years ago now, but specifically since, well, I guess September of 23, when Initiative 91 was filed that eventually became Proposition 127. Don't listen to me. Go listen to them. And then tell me who you agree with, because if you agree with them, then Colorado's a done deal. If you agree with us, if you agree with our perspective, to support the science and let CPW do the work, let Department of Natural Resources do the work, I think that most people will find just how serious it is when you listen to that side, when you're not from that side.
Yep. And I know you said this, and I hope legislators that do tune into Through the Gates, maybe go there and listen to that and decide who's more level-headed, who wants science, who wants perpetuation of species, landscapes, trust a system that works. I mean, I'll go back to how you and I met. You and I met filming. I've done 5 or 6 projects for biologists at Colorado Parks and Wildlife. One that got me in the door was my film about Colorado, the introduction of Colorado's moose. One of them was about elk. I won Emmys for those two. You and I met doing a pine marten study.
You thought, great, I got to get stuck with this idiot.
Yeah. Love it. Wouldn't have it any other way. But I don't know anything about pine marten. I know I've been elk hunting and I've seen a bunch of them. They're cool as hell. You can never get a photograph of them because they're always gone. You get to sit and enjoy them, but they're out there. I see them all the time when I'm hunting. But I bring that up because you get these organizations, defenders, Center for Biological Diversity. They put money into lawsuits and ballot-box biology. The NGO organizations that we affiliate with, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Wild Sheep, Rocky Mountain Bighorn Society, all those that we've partnered with and have been supportive of us, we've been supportive of them, put money into animals, habitat, landscape. The Colorado Trappers and Predator Hunters Association took a study that Colorado Parks and Wildlife was doing on pine marten, provided expertise, manpower, traps, bait, know-how, helped with timing, how to set your trap lines. Why did they do that study? Because they were prompted to, but then they got nothing from those HSUS, and
they didn't get anything out of that.
My point is the trapper is the one who stepped up and said, you guys want more data to help you better manage this species, which probably then translates to better management of species that they share a landscape with.
And we've done that on numerous occasions.
Expertise.
Yeah, we've done that on numerous occasions, Sean.
It's conservation.
We've supplied grants for cameras and equipment on fur bearer management. Mm-hmm. We've supplied ongoing education components on fur bearer and predator management. We've supplied, and we'll get chastised for it one way or another from the opposition because CPW is conspiring with the enemy. No, they're not. They're conspiring with organizations that have a legitimate interest and a skin in the game, no pun intended. Whether it's the Rocky Mountain Bighorn Society on bighorn sheep, Wild Earth Guardians ain't doing that shit. Mm-hmm. Whether it's the moose side, freaking the Humane World for Animals, formerly HSUS, isn't doing that shit. There's no organization that's on that side that turns around and puts their money where their mouth is, like what the conservation-minded sportsmen and women. Now, whether you agree with the harvest or not, the organizations are the ones that are doing the yeoman's work. How much money do you think that Cats Aren't Trophies is put into any bobcat or mountain lion management program, or to the National Wild Turkey Federation management program that they do with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, or Pheasants Forever, or Quail Forever? I mean, you name it. You find me one organization that has actually put any money in. Look at the freaking tax returns of some of these organizations. Look at their 990s that they have. When they have $500 million in assets and they're generating $200 to $400 million a year, and they can't put money where their mouth is except for turn around and trying to stop it and restrict it and prohibit it, that's a travesty in itself.
Lawyers and lawsuits.
Yes, the Equal Access to Justice Act, where they could turn around and sue the government, state or otherwise, and turn around and get their frickin' money back because the taxpayers have to find a way to pay for it. And when that money's gone for that year, there's no money left over for anybody else to do it. That's bullshit. For us to be able to turn around and do what we do and what we've instilled in ourselves over the course of the last 50, 60, 80, 125 years, I will argue our track record with any animal rights organization when it comes to what we do, what's right, and what they say is wrong. They have no proof. There's nothing that's been extirpated. There's no method of take that has turned around and created the demise of any species, not one, because it's been regulated. I'm not talking about pre-Western expansion. I'm not talking about Western expansion where they were trying to feed the entire freaking United States. I'm talking about since the North American model concept, since the Teddy Roosevelt era, since the Boone and Crockett Club, since all of the things were put in place with all the acts and all the governmental industry and industry leaders coming together. Not one of those organizations can turn around and belly up to the bar and say they've ever done anything of that magnitude, anything to be supportive, whether it's in this state or in the Western United States or the North American continent as a whole.
Yep. And I think if you're writing policy, in the legislature writing laws, if you vote, look at the people, look at the organizations who put money, boots on the ground to species, protect miles of river, clean water, acres of habitat for all wildlife. You want to hate what we, the consumptive user, does? It's not. They hate what they say we do, which is kill wildlife, kill animals. What we do is protect wildlife and habitat.
You know how many times I've been told by people that have reached out with a wildlife conflict issue, and they've reached out to what they thought was some helpful organization that was more holistic and more organic and more satisfactory to what they wanted to believe. And all of them said, we don't do that. All of them told these people over the years, I've been in business 40 years, we don't do that. So they'd end up calling me. They call us. They call our industry. The Humane Societies, the local ones or other ones, turn around and say, we don't do that. Call these guys. So we turn around and do it. And we tell them, here's their options, what they can do and how they can do it, and when they can do it, and where they can do it, and the repercussions or the benefits if they decide to do something different than whatever else is out there. But most all of them had asked, why do they advertise that they're the Humane Society? Why do they advertise that they turn around and take care of all the welfare and all the animals? CPW won't do this. Division of Wildlife won't do this. Department of Ag won't do this. These groups won't do this. Why is it some control operator's standpoint to be able to do it? Because nobody else takes care of it. There's not another mechanism out there. There's a commissioner on the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission, Jack Murphy. He runs a wildlife control business. It's worth mentioning that when he talked this summer in 2025, Jack believes in non-lethal of everything. You don't kill anything for any reason. But he also admitted to the fact that if you turn around and catch something and you take it and relocate it, most of it's going to die. Now that's from an expert, supposedly, on the commission, who's a wildlife control operator that solves conflict issues with wildlife. And he admits that you should be able to turn around and trap this and take it somewhere? No, because it's going to die. Most people don't know what they're doing, is what he said. I think that people expect experts to solve their problems in the most effective and efficient, humane manner as they can. But the majority of people know that not everything's going to live forever. And it doesn't matter whether you take it out of an attic and you have to dispatch it, or you have to put it down or euthanize it, or whatever term somebody wants to use, you're going to kill it. Or if you turn around and took it somewhere and it did the exact same thing because it didn't have a house, it didn't have any food, and it didn't have any territory, and somebody else came over there and killed it, to me, it's still dead. To them,
it would be better if it was dead and used and respected.
Yeah. But
So
they want to criticize me for doing it, and I'm willing to turn around and fight tooth and nail until we get the point across and we can continually prove the point that it's not that what I know, it's not what they know, it's what the experts know, and the experts know how this shit works.
So we talk about fight. Wrapping up, what are you on now? What's coming down the pike? What do you want people to know and engage in?
Well, over the course of the remainder of October and November and December, there's going to be preparations and movement from the animal rights community to try to invoke their wishes, wants, and desires through these management processes that are likely to play out during the early part of 2026. There's going to be things come up in the General Assembly through the legislature because, as I said, Governor Polis and First Gentleman Marlon Reese have particular things that they'd like to accomplish. He was just on a podcast with the Wildlife Wire that I mentioned and said, well, we didn't get as much done as what we want, but we hope to be able to turn around and get more. That's not all about animal welfare. Excuse me, a lot of that has to do with just harvest. A lot of it has to do with consumptive use. A lot of it has to do with just being able to turn around and sustain wildlife management from a different perspective than what they believe. They're going to try to get done what they can get done through the commission, through the General Assembly, because they know that as this stuff starts to work through the hoops and the hurdles and stuff, that if they don't get accomplished what they want, if they don't get the movement going the direction they need to, I'm not going to say they'll consider this a complete failure, but it's going to be harder for their supporters and for their advocates to gain any significant traction for the next move that they want to do. I'm not so sure what we're going to end up with the ballot initiatives in 2026, the general election. I know that Initiative 52, that became Initiative 82, that became Initiative 98, are not anywhere yet. 52 was taken off the table. 82 and 98 are still there, but we anticipate they have until March of 2026 to get that filed and get a title. Remember that not until September 22nd of 2023 did we have an Initiative 91.
Right.
So people are like, oh, right now they're like, oh, well, we dodged that bullet. No, we're still 3 weeks earlier than what we were when they first filed Initiative 91 in 2023, that it was almost 6 months to go through that entire process, and then they had 6 months to gather the signatures. We could still see some significant ballot-driven initiative on the 2026 general election. I would anticipate that to be the case. I think that they feel like that they have an opportunity that they're missing out on. I think the thing that gives them reservations at this point in time is how those 3 other ballot initiatives, 309, 308, and 127, were defeated last year. And it's like, ooh, wait a minute, maybe it's not as good as what we thought it was. Well, surely that was an anomaly. That was a misnomer. We should be able to do something different.
They're gonna write it in a way that's sneaky and hard to understand.
Yes. The other thing that people need to be aware of is anybody that paid attention to Initiative 13, which was by the Smart Wolf Policy folks to be able to stop any wolf introduction by December 31st of 2026. That pretty much got shot down handedly by the signators. They gained 25,000 signatures, and they needed 200,000 to meet the required threshold of 124,000. They got 25,000 signatures, generated $50,000 or whatever. It's not there. I think a lot of it's the messenger, a lot of it's the message, and a lot of it's just the strategy that they employed, which the ad community came out in full force against that opportunity. The sportsman community came out in full force against that opportunity.
Well, because we want
we want science-based management, just to turn around and just keep going back to the ballot and say, do this and don't do that, and do this and don't do that. That's bullshit.
You can't say I don't like ballot box biology and then run your own ballot box measure.
To stop what somebody else already did.
Right.
No.
It's I don't like ballot box biology, but mine's okay. No.
Yeah.
Let the managers and scientists manage it.
And that's the thing that I'm trying to get a point across to people is, look, you and I can disagree on what we're going to have for dinner. But if we're going to disagree on eating, period, well, then I have a distinct problem with that. We can agree to disagree. And I think that the guys with that Initiative 13, I think they were underfunded. I think they were misguided. I think they were ill-informed. I think they were strongly lacking a strategy. And they thought that everybody would just come out in full force. Well, let me tell you, if you gain 25,000 signatures out of what you needed of 200,000, so you could qualify for the 125,000, because there's going to be a bunch that you miss and some that aren't good and some that aren't bad. That's a complete lack of preparation for what you were trying. They were trying to go on the coattails of what we did on 127.
Right, and you cannot imagine the effort and organization and forward thinking that went into that.
Yeah, I mean, just real briefly, I mean, people need to understand the reason we won 127 that we continually talk about, because everybody else refers to it. People are probably tired of hearing about it, but that was a major, major, major victory in the state of Colorado that actually was recognized throughout the nation. The reason we won on 127 was not because we were so formidable and we raised so much money. It wasn't because we laid out a strategy that was so well thought out. It was because we had 9 years to prepare, and we were defeating every single measure to get to that point. And it allowed us to compile our thoughts, raise the money, create the strategy, and complete what we started in defeating back in 2019. It was 9 years of efforts to get to the culmination of 2024. What those guys on Initiative 13 wanted to do was start in January, 2 months after the election, and be completed by March, and then have all their signatures by June and be raising millions of dollars. Well, I tell you what, you come out of the woodwork and try to start a Super Bowl caliber football team, and you just got into the league. Nobody's ever done that, and nobody's ever going to be able to do that because it's not feasible.
Yep. And 9 years of preparation and then 15, 16 months of campaign.
Yes.
Every single day, every single week, something big happened. To the point I almost stopped answering your phone calls. But it was, here's the next thing. Here's the thing coming out. Like, we're trying to get funding because it does take funding. We're trying to create relationships. We're trying to get messaging out there. We're freaking shadow banned, so how do we get that out there? We need help from you on this point, you on this point. We need to fight.
We're getting criticized from who should have been our supporters.
Yep.
And we're getting with significant end rounds by who should have been our supporters because they knew better. Now, they didn't know squat because they weren't from Colorado. They didn't know the strategy, the message, the demographics, the geographics. They didn't, but they knew because they were from Washington, D.C. Well, everybody from Washington, D.C. knows everything more than everybody else. We had all of those hurdles to deal with, not to mention the fact the individual personal things that these individuals brought out that were against the campaign, against me, and against our livelihood. They brought everything and threw it at the wall to see what would stick. And I think that that's a telltale sign when I sit in these conversations and they talk about wolves and they go, but the vote of the people. And I'm, yeah, okay, that's fine. What about remember the vote of the people on 127?
Yeah.
You
didn't vote your way.
Yeah.
So let's ignore that.
Exactly.
No way.
You know,
Wow.
And so how many times I heard Samantha Miller say on that podcast with Marlon Reese that it's amazing to me how many people just want to turn around and go back and relitigate and re-question what the vote of the people was. But she didn't say what happened to the vote of the people on 127. So it's amazing to me that you won by 1.8% or whatever the hell it was, and you acknowledge that and want to browbeat the hell out of it. But when you lose by 10, that doesn't matter. And I think that those comical things that we can turn around and keep putting out there to say, okay, we'll adhere to your claim that you won. I don't have a problem with that. But I have a problem with they don't acknowledge the fact that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. What you say over here, you're not willing to adhere to on this side. We've got a tough road to toe in the next 6 months because that'll lay the groundwork out for how this next election is going to happen. And then from March of 26 until November of 26, you're going to see a monumental effort, a monumental push from that side of the aisle to try to capitalize on what they're grasping at straws on if they can't get what they want from the commission and they can't get what they want from the General Assembly. They're going to do whatever the hell they can do to set the tone and narrative that is going to be in their favor when Governor Polis and Marlon Reese are gone, that hopefully somebody else will turn around and carry their torch. And we're trying to smother that torch and make sure that the people of Colorado who have spoken repeatedly on multiple issues could continue to maintain their position and their opinions and let the scientists manage Colorado's wildlife.
That is 100% the position of the people in Colorado.
Yep.
Is let the experts. It wasn't some slogan that we made up. We're going to run that campaign every time because you can't argue it.
No.
Because that's the best way to
Well, the only time...
Not your experts.
Right.
Not science that fits your argument.
Right.
It is the science by people who are on boots on the ground in Colorado that understand the dynamics of the state, including the landscape, the waterways, the airways, and the people, human impact on the landscape, how that all meshes together, works together, doesn't work together so we can fix it.
Yeah.
Those are the experts at Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Let them do the freaking job.
I'm 100% agreement, and I would hope that the people would, when they get a chance to vote, when they get a chance to engage, and we've had some really good guests on it to give people options on what they could do and how they could participate. But I would hope that people would say, enough is enough. I can't sit on the sidelines any longer. I need to participate. You don't have to turn around and give 6 months out of your life. But I say this over and over, give 8 hours a year times 1 million sportsmen and women in the state of Colorado. That's 8 million hours divided by 40-hour weeks, how much volunteerism do we get by people giving 8 hours a year? Maybe that's 8 hours at a commission meeting, maybe it's 8 hours at the General Assembly, maybe it's 8 hours at Sportsman Day at the Capitol and Outdoorsman Days and 3 other major functions that pertain to. I'm not talking about 8 hours of fun stuff. I'm talking about 8 hours of politically driven, science-based decision-making processes by elected and appointed officials, and then put that time into the ballot side of things, and we will be unbeatable because we're professing and we're preaching the truth. We're preaching what the facts are, the data, the statistics. The 900 plus employees of an agency that has roughly 900 or 1,000 volunteer or seasonal employees, 2,000 employees within Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Why the hell are we listening to me or Samantha frickin' Miller? Why are we listening to Marlon Reese or some frickin' rancher on the Western Slope? We all have an opinion, but let the freaking experts do it.
Yep.
And until we do that, and until we turn around and hold the line on that, I'm fearful that Colorado will fall, and I don't think Coloradans want that to happen.
I agree. Well, this has been a short update.
You got about an hour.
Yeah. Any other closing words?
No, I would just say if people have an opportunity to get involved, don't pass it by. Don't think that it's going to continually be here for the next season. Don't think that if you stand idle and stand on the sidelines while you're out pursuing your endeavors and taking your favorite method of take and going out and pursuing your favorite game, don't think that it's going to be available for you to be able to continue to do. We don't need you all the time, but when we need you, and we need you to step up. What we do for the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management is to enhance, promote, and defend the North American model of wildlife conservation and responsible wildlife management. That's it. We're not asking for your membership. We're asking for your contribution and making sure that you help us sustain the fight. Because without us at this point in time, show me who else has stood up, who else has stepped up, who's bellied up to the bar to do it. We need your help, and we'll continue to fight on your behalf.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Through the Gates. For more content like this, make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe on all of our channels.